on the 6.4 F250, we'd gone ahead and gotten everything underneath the truck buttoned up. Since the truck was up in the air, we went ahead and threw the 5-inch exhaust on. So it is on and all tightened up. Everything underneath the hood is almost done. We've got oil, and Barry is working on flushing the coolant system while getting vacuum bleeding the coolant system. I've buttoned everything up, got everything ran the way I'd like it. Make it look as factory as possible. We have all of the edge connectors are down here. Got the boost controller here. We're getting stuff buttoned up here. We got to add power steering fluid and coolant. And then we got to add some tranny fluid. And then we're going to have to go ahead and bleed the fuel to get all the air out of the fuel system. Ladies and gentlemen, if you buy a parts vehicle, do everything you can to replace everything on the parts vehicle. Because if the vehicle you were driving had no issues or no problems, then you should just run with those parts that came off of your old vehicle. Hence the reason why the front end of this truck has been ripped apart. It did run, but the radiator had sprung a leak. Right there. So something had hit just right there. Which had caused it to leak. Parts truck has a good radiator. So we're gonna go ahead and pull that radiator off and get it installed. But all that work, putting everything together, something like this happens, just prevent it right from the get-go. I'm replacing all the radiators. So I'm getting all that, I'm gonna replace all that, except for this guy right here, because mine was busted. But save yourself the headache. Just pull everything that's on your vehicle and put it on the replacement vehicle. As you can see, got the radiator out of the black truck in here. Went ahead and replaced the radiator, the AC condenser, all the coolers, with the exception of the trans cooler. Secondary trans cooler, I think is what it is. Because the one that was inside the black truck was dented. Now, we got the truck fired up. We got her running, and everything seemed to be going pretty good. Still have to bleed the front brakes because the brake pedal went all the way to the floor. So we still gotta get that air out of the ABS system. But other than that, it seemed like everything was going good. So we'd backed the truck out, backed it over here in the wash bay. And then I noticed a small trail. Probably every 6 to 8 inches, there was a drop. Looked underneath the truck, and behind the engine, where the transmission bolts in for the bell housing, seems to be some leaking there. crawl underneath there, and we're using the GO5 coolant, and that's what I thought it was at first. I thought we had another coolant leak. So I was a little upset about that, but it's a coolant leak. We can figure it out. I went ahead and run my finger across the bottom of the transmission, the bell housing, smelled it, and it was diesel. With everything here, I could have dealt with a leak up here, I could have dealt with a leak up here, I could have dealt with a leak anywhere. But the problem is I am getting a slow leak from the high pressure fuel pump return line coming into the factory bowl, which means I have to either take off the turbos, lift up the cab. So I'm gonna have to either take off the turbos, lift the cab, don't remove the turbos, remove the exhaust system, or remove the transmission, remove the back exhaust system to get access to the high pressure fuel pump. I'm gonna try everything I can to work around everything, because the only thing I need to replace is a banjo bolt back there. I don't have to physically pull any hard parts off. So I don't have to pull the cover, I don't have to pull the high pressure fuel pump or anything like that. When I was reassembling everything, I had tightened one, and then I went to tighten the other one, and it snapped, which is no good. It broke right off, which was pretty depressing, but I had another K16 sitting here off the junk motor, so I just pulled it and put it on. What I think happened is I think this one I had over torqued. Now, Ford has come up with a new seal here, so instead of using the brass, they have a plastic seal. And what I think happened is when I tightened this banjo bolt down, I had cracked one of these seals. Now, if you break this and you don't have a secondary, or you don't have a spare K16 laying around, you cannot buy this fitting by itself. You have to buy the K16. There is a company that sells machined aftermarket banjo bolts that, first off, they're made of a better material and they are thicker, and the best part about it is it doesn't have this hole right here. So it's stronger. One of two things might have happened. I could have cracked one of these new plastic seals, or I could have twisted this thread, which would have put tension on this nut here, which could have raised while the truck was running, and I could have sprung a leak there. Either way, this is not good because it's not easy to get to. The aftermarket ones are $65 a piece. A little salty, but well worth it when it comes to something like this. I will keep you guys tuned.
It's so nice.
Got the transmission out. I was able to take the studs out and slide the torque converter back inside the transmission. I used a longer bolt, got in on the oil pan and pushed it so that way it was seated back completely, so I don't have to worry about it coming out with, or I don't have to worry about it getting stuck on the flywheel, since the flywheel rides across this little center line here. I sprayed this off with brake clean like an idiot, so it's flaking and everything, but it's no big deal. Anyway, I'll go ahead and show you. I was able to fiddle around the heat shields. Get my flashlight here. Get it set up here for you guys. But anyway, see if I can get the camera down in there. All right, so right there are the fuel lines. Hopefully you guys can see that. Anyway, the fuel lines right there. I just got done cleaning them. I sprayed some brake clean on it. So I'm going to see if I can possibly turn the truck the key on, get that fuel pump pumping, see if I can figure out which line is leaking. I'm replacing both banjo bolts, but I do want to know exactly where it's coming from before I tear everything apart. Stumble back there. I was able to get to the top of the high pressure fuel pump without removing the up pipes. I wiggled the heat shields out of the way, and I did have to take the down pipe for the exhaust off, which is no big deal. Once the transmission's out, the down pipe comes out real easily. But because I have an external wastegate on one of the up pipes and it ties in, it's almost impossible to get to the bolts that bolt the up pipe to the turbo without the cab, or with the cab on here. Without the cab, it'd have been easy, but as you can see, I'm trying to keep everything intact. I'm trying to remove as little as I possibly can. We'll go ahead and show you. Here is the aftermarket banjos. This is from East Coast Diesel, and the great part about it is instead of it being like a cast product, it is machined. It's one machine unit, and it doesn't have a hole all the way through it, which is really nice because that means that makes this top part right here really strong. So if you do happen to over torque it, it shouldn't twist. Shouldn't, but you could still break these as well. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get the brass fitting, or the brass seals, instead of using the factory forward ones that they've come out with now that are plastic. I'm not going to put plastic back here. Didn't think too much of it when I got it the first time, because that's, you know, Ford recommended to upgrade to their seals, and I'm not a big fan of that, so I'm going to go ahead and use the brass fittings on here. But there she is. We'll see where this leak's coming from exactly. So far, so good. Went ahead and replaced the banjo bolts on the high pressure fuel pump with the East Coast Diesel banjo bolts, and so far it seems to have sealed, but I still have a leak. But so far it's not fuel. I am actually leaking coolant from this reservoir right here. The reservoir's cracked or something. Something's going on with the reservoir, and it is leaking fluid. It is leaking out coolant. It's super hard to see. Oh, sure, let me see if I can tap on the camera here. Get you guys down in there. Anyway, it's leaking right there. Right where that bolt is. Not that one. This one over. Man, it is hard to see that one right there. It's leaking from that bolt over there where the light's hitting it. Sorry about the noise. And that came off of my truck, my black one. So we have this one right here that came off of this truck originally. And we're going to go ahead and get it in there.
what I'm thinking is it's leaking from around this seal somehow. Where that seal right there is, it's most likely leaking. So we will throw this on and see if it takes care of the problem. If not, then I'll have to order one from Ford, which won't be too big of a deal, but at least I know exactly what's going on. Like I said, it's leaking. Right there, you can see it. It's dripping. And what it's doing is it's going down the frame rail over there. The engine crossover frame. And it's leaking. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that off, get that fixed real quick. Then there's a few other things that got buttoned up on the truck. And then we will take it out for its first test drive.